Hey, long time no see. As per usual, I always go fucking weeks or months between any updates. I've tried shooting this one a couple times already, just didn't really turn out the way I wanted it to. So, third time's the charm, I suppose. I'm gonna try to cut back on the aimless rambling in this one. Um, Day before yesterday, I weighed in at 189. Yesterday I was 191. This morning 190. So clearly, I'm floating around 190 at the moment. As a sort of particularly recent context, from about like the end of September, early October or so, I started a bulk cycle for the first time ever. And I want to say like mid to late November is when I stopped. So I went from 195 around the end of September to 225 around like early to mid November, which is way too fast. Don't don't take me as a good example. Um, yeah, 30 pounds in like a month and a half. That's not how you're supposed to do it. Uh, but I was consistently lifting, and my diet was, at least about a third protein. So, also, I'm 5'10", if anyone doesn't know that, and 28 years old, at least for another couple of months. Uh, so yeah, 30 pounds in like a month and a half. But then around mid-November into December, I have been cutting. And I got down to 189 like maybe 2 weeks ago. So I lost all 30 plus about five more in like a month and a half, which again, too fast. Don't take me as a good example. I can tell that I've retained some of the muscle that I put on during the bulk cycle, but I didn't put on a lot of muscle. It was mostly fat. I've lost all of that, and I've almost certainly lost some of the muscle that I put on, if not most of it. So was it particularly productive? Maybe not, because I did it a really stupid way. I bulked way too fast, put on a lot more fat than I needed to, and then I cut way too fast, lost more muscle than I needed to. Don't take me as a good example, but ultimately, I still feel like I ended up in a better place than I started. I just could have done so more efficiently. I could have put on less fat and not needed to lose as much. The problem is, if I don't see results happening, like if it's taking a while and it's hard for me to like measure the progress because it's being measured over the course of weeks rather than days, then I get paranoid that nothing is going the way it's supposed to. And so I have a really hard time staying in that middle ground where any sensible person should want to be. It's just not a comfortable place for me mentally, because then I really start questioning myself and second guessing and doubting. And so I have to have it like one way or the other, like balls to the wall, or else I just like I get it in my head that like, oh, I'm not putting on any muscle at all, or the other way around. I'm not losing any weight at all. I just got fat and stayed fat. And so like, yeah, I have some thoughts about potentially doing it again, but I really have to learn some lessons from the first experiment with a bulk and cut cycle, and to do it better next time. Do it more healthy for one, and also just slow down some so that I'm actually like making good progress and then effectively preserving it as well as I can. Um, so there you have it. But the big thing here, um, one of the more blockbuster parts of this update, the 27th of November, I had an appointment with a local plastic surgeon for just a consultation for loose skin surgery. So there are nothing has a date here. There is the date that this consultation took place, but nothing got scheduled. I haven't even gotten fucking. They were gonna like mail me quotes of like what prices would be talked about for these things, and they never did. I'm gonna have to call them back and be like, hey, I know the holidays and everything, but you said you were gonna mail me those in like early December, and it's January next year. I don't have them yet. Um, so I need to do that at some point. That's on the to-do list to call them about that. Uh, so yeah, nothing crazy happening yet, but I went to that appointment. And the plastic surgeon, he was like grabbing at bits of my belly and stuff. Like, shit, I might be half tempted to just fucking show you, as embarrassing as it is. Like, I am wearing a crop top right now, or more realistically, a t-shirt that I cut the bottom half of off, and underwear and nothing else because I'm in bed at noon on a Wednesday because I'm out of a job at the moment. Anyways, sure, why not? He was grabbing like this part of my belly, like boobs are just barely out of view here. He was like grabbing at like this. He was like, "Ah, you see, it's not completely elastic here, so you could lose more weight." And like that was one of the things I was like kind of trying to have checked into is like just a general sort of where am I at? Because I have no formal education or training in any of this. And I assume the plastic surgeon who does this kind of shit all the time probably does. And so I was wondering, I didn't expect to get like a realistic like body fat percentage measurement or whatever, but I did want to know like, if I'm carrying X amount of pounds of loose skin, then how much lean mass do I have? If we pretended that the skin wasn't there, what kind of like general idea of my BMI, for whatever value that measurement has, where would I be at? Like, am I starving myself beyond a reasonable limit here? Am I still kind of pudgy and could use more work? Like, which I figured that it was the second one. I didn't have it in my head that I am dangerously thin, and I don't want to be. As some people are obsessed with that look for some god awful reason. I don't like that look on other people, and I don't want it for myself. So, um, anyways, yeah. According to the plastic surgeon, I could stand to lose more weight, and I'd still be all right. So I might. I think I've pretty consistently said that like a lower limit for me would be like 170 to 175. I would not be surprised if I've said that number before in several videos, because that's always just where I've had it in my head. Like, I mean, going by BMI, I could go lower and I would still be in the normal weight range, but I want to carry a little muscle mass on me, and that does inflate your BMI a bit. So I think being at the higher, somewhere in the higher half of what would be considered a normal BMI for my height, weight, age, etc. Um, being in the higher half of a decent BMI for me has always been like the end goal for me. Like, I don't care to go any lower than that, but I also don't particularly want to be like in the overweight or obese categories anymore. BMI is flawed in some ways for sure, but it is also like speaking to the history of it. And again, keep in mind I have no formal education or training in this, but from what I remember hearing is that it came about basically it was an insurance related thing, and they were basically drawing a correlation between like at what point does a person's weight relative to their height correlate with increased risk of certain conditions, cardiovascular disease and shit like that. So there is it's literally built on that correlation, and so it's it's still a decent sort of general guideline with some things that it doesn't account for all the time, but for most people, generally speaking, being in the obese category on the BMI scale is a bad idea for your health. Again, most people, generally speaking, there are contingencies, but overall, yeah, it's you can take that much from it at least, I think. So yeah, I don't want to be in that range anymore, but I still think the heavier end of normal is where I want to be. Post loose skin. I just with the loose skin, I don't know how much of it there is. I don't know like what kind of an effect it has. Like does being in the overweight category because of the loose skin have the same effect as not having the loose skin but being in the overweight category just by having more fat? Like I don't know. I don't understand these things. I don't have the training for these things, etc. So I got some degree of answers. There are some answers I didn't get. I think maybe there are some answers that I just can't realistically get. Not until some things change and I find out firsthand, probably. Um, maybe some questions I have that just straight up like nobody's really researched or it's inconclusive or whatever. I don't know. But regardless, I did find out that I could stand to lose more weight. And I mean, despite that, like, I'm 190 pounds, and I have doctor's visits on record where I was a little over 400. So I definitely qualify. I could get the surgery, and it would certainly make a stark difference, at least in some regions of my body. But yeah, that would be definitely down the road. Stepping away from the weight, fitness, whatever sphere for a moment. The rest of my life, I briefly mentioned I'm out of a job at the moment. I have been doing seasonal helper work with UPS just to kind of bridge the gap a bit because I don't know. Yeah, I do. I have had videos where I've mentioned this. I got fucking fired because I got super mad at my last like real job over some bullshit, which looking back on it was not that big of a deal. There were also facts about the issue that I was not privy to, that nobody told me about, that I only found out after the fact, that would have made me less angry had I known at the time, but nobody told me, and that was a running theme at that place where people just didn't tell me shit. Um, Shit that I really needed to know, but nobody wanted to tell me because, when you're just a general laborer instead of management, nobody wants to tell you anything that you do not immediately and urgently and crucially need to know because you are not a human being. You are a thing that presses a button on an electric screwdriver. And I was disposed as such the moment I became the slightest bit of a nuisance. Uh, Oops. Sucks for me. So I've been trying to find new work and I have been selective or else I would have found new work already. I could just go to a temp agency or fucking apply to McDonald's or whatever, but I haven't done that because I don't want to fucking do that. I want a decent job, and in particular, I really have been trying to break into a trade of some sort. I don't particularly care if it's HVAC or carpentry or fucking bricklaying. I don't give a shit. I just want to get out of general labor, or fry cookery or whatever. I haven't actually done like the closest thing I've done to a food related job was a factory that made ham. Um, Packaged was I was in the packaging side of the factory, but regardless, I haven't done fast food before, and I'm not interested in trying it. I don't want a fucking call center job. I don't want to be like a fucking Amazon delivery driver for pennies an hour. I want 18 plus an hour, which for my area is not bad. It's still not great. But for someone who didn't go to college at all, I spent most of my like early to mid 20s homeless, more or less. I can't be asking for 25 an hour. That ain't gonna fucking happen. That's not on the table. But 18 plus, I feel like, is fairly reasonable and not super entry level type shit like fast food or working a cash register. And yeah, I want to develop some professional skills and get away from that world because when you don't have a specific skill set, when you are when any person off the street is as qualified for your job as you are, that makes you very disposable. And you will be treated as such. And I'm sick of it. Because that's the position I've always been in. And it's always been this thing where it just feels like if I make the slightest fuck up, if I raise too much of a fuss about something, if somebody doesn't fucking like the look of me, it feels like I'm going to get fired at any moment. And it has happened, and there's also been times where they haven't fired me, but they've treated me so fucking bad that I couldn't take it anymore, and I had to quit because if I didn't remove myself from that situation, I was going to end up in prison because they pissed me off so bad. And I just want to have some sort of a skill set because then you have at least a degree of leverage. If you are like a skilled welder, carpenter, whatever, your employer will hurt at least a little if they lose you on short notice. And so they're going to make at least some kind of an effort not to, which would be something I've never experienced before. No employer I've had before has ever put in the slightest effort to convince me that I should stick around because they haven't had to. Because if I quit, they can just plug in some high school kid the next day and it's like nothing ever happened for them. I need my employer to hurt if I leave. So, yeah, I want to develop some professional skills and I want to move on. I want to make more money. I want to start dating again. And I know, like, I don't expect some poor girl to waste her fucking time with a broke ass loser like me. It's bad enough that I'm ugly as shit and I don't make any fucking money either. Like, I'm asking a lot of some girl and I'm not even trying to date right now because I know that that's just too much. Any girl who's kind enough to give this a chance deserves more than fucking Burger King pay in return, you know? So I'm still off the market in terms of dating and I am on the market in terms of employment. And I have actually a few days ago I got a call for a job as a maintenance tech apprentice, which sounds like it's in the direction of something that I'm looking for. They told me, given we're coming off the holidays, I'm recording this on January 2nd. Um, they told me, like, at some point in the next week, you should expect another call from one of our recruiters and blah, blah, blah. If they don't call you back within a week or so, call us again and we'll try to get something set up. And I just did that like 2 hours ago. I made that call because they hadn't called me. Because I'm assuming that this is either the first or the second day that they have back in the office. And they just haven't gotten around to it, or the memo didn't land, or something. I don't know. But the holidays is everything all fucked up, and so things are wacky. But yeah, I called them back. I've been trawling Indeed and other websites and just anytime I see anything that has apprenticeship, trainee, whatever in the title, as long as it's not like I'm not gonna do like there's listings for surgical tech apprentice. I don't that might be a plan B or plan C. But that's not plan A right now. I'm looking at my plan A options, the things that I want the most. So like apprentice slash trainee, carpenter, mechanic, etc. I've also been looking into construction postings because they're not like a skilled trade to get in on like entry level construction work, but a lot of these trade apprenticeships they've made it clear that they value candidates with construction experience. And so I'm like, if I can't get straight into one of these apprenticeships like I'm trying to do, I might do construction for a year or two first, and then try again with the trades. And hopefully, having the construction experience will make my resume a bit more attractive as a candidate for a trade apprenticeship. Um, Anyways, that's where I'm at in like my professional life. In the meantime, now that the seasonal helper work is over, I'm just gonna have to do a bunch of fucking DoorDash, um, which sucks. But at the same time, I don't have any kind of like pissy fucking manager or supervisor breathing down my neck, just looking for an excuse to get shitty with me all day. So it could be worse. I get to listen to my music and there's nobody on my ass, and I find the customers generally not that hard to deal with. Like, I've worked in retail before, and the customers were the least hard part of the job for me. Um, as much as I'm not like a social butterfly, I'm certainly no extrovert. I undoubtedly have. I'm somewhere on the autism spectrum. I mean, anyone who's watched one of my videos before, we know. Um, but regardless, like, yeah, dealing with customers has never really been an issue for me. It's always dealing with management. I have a terrible authority problem, and the people who go into management generally have a terrible Napoleon complex. Um, it does not match up well. So if I ever get into a position where I can be like properly self-employed or something and actually make a decent living doing so, that would be ideal for me, but I don't really see that being in my future anytime soon or perhaps ever. Um, so that's unfortunate. I'm gonna have to settle for making myself someone so valuable that they can't afford to play that shit with me, is what I'm gonna have to do. Um, or just, learn to bite my tongue and accept that I'm going to live a life of humiliation and mistreatment, and that's just what life means in this world these days. Um, I'm such a bright and peppy person, aren't I? Yeah. So in that context, yeah, any sort of loose skin surgery is going to be a while in the future. Just miles off, because I am desperately broke. Um, so yeah, I've been thinking, considering that, I may want to go ahead and run another bulk cut cycle, maybe two more. I don't know. We'll see how I feel about it, because it was pretty challenging the first time around, both emotionally and just practically. Um, and also the fact that, eating enough to gain all that weight, like, it can kind of be costly. um I save a lot of money when I'm not eating a whole lot, so there is that. um and I got to worry about, like, getting to a point where my clothes don't really fit me anymore. I mean, it's arguable as to whether or not they do now, but if the situation gets too much worse, it's not like I can afford to go out and replace my wardrobe. So, like, I have some considerations to make. There are some constraints on what I can do here, just for purely practical and financial reasons. But um also, in terms of aesthetics, I don't want to be too fucking muscular. I know, like, most men would have no problem taking it to just a fucking absolute extreme. I am not one of them. I particularly enjoy being a bit more feminine in appearance. As much as I can't deal with my Shrek face, I don't like having, I don't want, it's not that I've ever had, I don't want to have a fucking Kyriakos Grizzly body or anything like that. Um, so, there are a lot of parameters here in various categories that I am working within. But the fact of the matter is, like, I would be fine with at least a bit more muscle mass, and I would definitely be fine with losing a bit more weight. Um, and by weight, I purely mean fat. Um, So I may run another bulk cut cycle or two, who knows. Have to see how the first one, how all of this goes before I really get too far ahead in my planning. But I might do it again. Because, if the surgery is going to be a while down the road, I have time. And I don't want to be playing with these ups and downs after I get the loose skin surgery. Like, ideally, I would achieve all of my goals minus the actual surgery part before I have the surgery. So that when I do, I can just stay at maintenance and coast there and just try to maintain that shape more or less for the rest of my life. And that would minimize all the stretching my skin back out after I've paid all that money and gone through all that hardship to get it fucking taken off. So I'm tempted to make those fucking adjustments now and then worry about the surgery down the road when it becomes financially viable, anyways. If it becomes financially viable. Um, I do not have high expectations for my life, unfortunately. I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm a fucking downer. And to be honest, I feel like I have good reason to be. Knowing my history, watching what's happening to much of my generation, if not most of it, um, I am not expecting a whole lot out of my life. Most days it's hard to just continue, to be honest. But regardless, that's where I'm at. That's how things are going. Wish I had better news, but you know, hey, I haven't put the weight back on. At least not in a lasting sense. I did the bulk cycle. I had my quote unquote fun. It was really not that fun. I was eating myself sick. I spent a lot of my bulk cycle like kind of excited to get to the cut phase, um, because it just, yeah, it was not that great. Some of you might be like, oh man, it's like having a cheat day every day, and it's like you forget just how sick all that shit makes you feel. Like, God, it was miserable, to be honest. And of course, if I didn't keep up with, like, I had to lift heavy and often and consistently through the whole thing, or else it was just a complete waste of time because I was only going to put on fat and no muscle. So I was eating myself sick. And then, like, as I'm bloated and nauseous and feeling all kinds of backed up and pukey, like, I had to go fucking rep out a shitload of heavy ass squats and deadlifts and shit. And it's just like, oh my God, end me, please. It was miserable. It was not easy. It was not like having a cheat day every day. When you have a cheat day like once every couple weeks or something, it's like a fun event thing. But when you do it all the time, you get so fucking sick. Especially because like I've had like a couple years now of adjusting to a more moderated approach to eating, and then going from that for a couple of years, a consistent habit for a couple of years of being more moderated in my intake, to just straight up the training wheels are off, we're flying off the rails. Fucking, oh, it was bad. And then the cut has its own challenges in terms of swinging the complete opposite direction, where you just feel depleted all the time because you're taking in less than you're using, and so it makes you feel like you're fucking wasting away because you kind of are, just in a slightly controlled fashion. So yeah, it has not been a fun thing, but I do think it's pretty conclusive in terms of like if you want to like get results fast, a bulk cut situation will do it a lot faster than main gaining. Um, it is definitely the crash course approach. It totally works, but it's hard. So, do you want the thing that takes extreme patience and dedication, or do you want the thing that takes less extreme patience and dedication, but will make you feel like shit the whole time? Um, welcome to weight loss. There is no easy answer. If you found something easy, then it almost certainly is not going to work. Um, Anything worth doing is going to be extremely fucking difficult to do. And if it's not extremely difficult to do, then it is probably not worth doing. Um, there are no free rides in biology. Sorry to say. Um, in any case, I'm going to go be depressive somewhere else, and I will leave you to hopefully a brighter day now that you are finished consuming my unfortunate content. I'll see you around.